Have you ever felt that gnawing sensation in your gut when someone walks into the room? That subtle tightening in your chest, the way your shoulders instinctively tense up, how your natural smile fades just a little bit? We've all experienced it. That visceral reaction our body has to certain people, warning us that something just isn't right. You see, our bodies are incredible instruments of truth. Long before our minds can rationalize or explain it, our bodies know. They recognize toxic energy the same way animals sense an approaching storm. But somewhere along the way, we've learned to ignore these signals. We've been taught to doubt ourselves, to give endless second chances to explain away behavior that hurts us. Today, we're going to change that. Today, we're going to rediscover that innate wisdom we were all born with, the ability to recognize when something or someone isn't serving our highest good. Because here's the truth that nobody talks out. Toxic people aren't always obvious villains. They don't walk around wearing signs. Often they're the charming colleague who always has a compliment ready, the friend who seems so concerned about your life choices, the family member who claims everything they do is for your own good. But beneath that carefully crafted exterior lies something far more insidious. These individuals aren't just difficult people having a bad day. They're emotional vampires who slowly drain your energy, your confidence, and your joy. They're masters of manipulation who can make you question your own reality, your own worth, your own sanity. Let me share something with you that changed my entire perspective on this subject. I was counseling a successful businessman. Let's call him a seeker of truth. This man had built an empire from nothing, employed hundreds of people, and yet sitting in front of me, he looked completely broken. His voice trembled as he shared how a single relationship had brought him to his knees. I don't understand. He said, I can negotiate million-dollar deals. I can handle board meetings and corporate takeovers, but this has made me feel like I'm losing my mind. That's the insidious nature of toxic relationships. They don't announce themselves with dramatic displays of cruelty. Instead, they creep in slowly like a fog that gradually thickens until you can't see where you're going anymore. They distort your reality so subtly that by the time you realize something's wrong, you're already deeply entangled. But here's what I want you to understand, what I need you to really hear. This isn't about them. This is about you. This is about reclaiming your power, your peace, and your ability to trust yourself. Because the truth is, toxic people don't have power over us. We give them power. We give it through our need for approval, through our fear of confrontation, through our desire to be nice at all costs. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you ignored your intuition because you didn't want to seem judgmental? How often have you pushed aside your own needs because someone made you feel selfish for having them? How many times have you said yes when every fiber of your being was screaming no? The first step in protecting yourself from toxic people is learning to recognize them. And that recognition begins with understanding that toxicity often wears a mask of virtue. It disguises itself as concern, as helpfulness, as loyalty, as love. But true love, genuine care, doesn't demand that you diminish yourself. It doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth. It doesn't leave you feeling confused, drained, or questioning your sanity. Let me share with you the first and most crucial sign of a toxic person: inconsistency. They're sweet one moment and cruel the next. They're incredibly generous, then unexpectedly vindictive. They build you up with praise, only tear you down with subtle criticism. This inconsistency serves a purpose. It keeps you off balance, constantly trying to get back to the good version of them that you've glimpsed. This brings us to the second sign, the constant state of confusion they create. You find yourself constantly trying to figure out what you did wrong, why they're upset, how to get back to normal. You spend hours analyzing conversations, second-guessing your actions, wondering if you're being too sensitive. That confusion is not an accident. It's a tool of control. The third sign is what I call the reality twist. This is when they deny things you know happen, tell you you're remembering things wrong, or insist their harmful actions were just jokes you're taking too seriously. They might even accuse you of the very behaviors they're displaying, leaving you defensive and disoriented. But perhaps the most telling sign is how you feel in their presence. Do you find yourself walking on eggshells? Are you constantly monitoring your words and actions to avoid setting them off? Do you feel exhausted after spending time with them, as if your very life force has been drained? These feelings aren't coincidental. They're your internal warning system trying to protect you. You see, our bodies and minds are designed for growth, for joy, for connection. When we're around someone who threatens these natural states, our entire being rebels against it. That rebellion manifests as anxiety, depression, physical illness, and a deep sense. These feelings aren't signs of weakness. They're not evidence that you're too sensitive or can't handle normal relationships. They're evidence that your internal compass is working perfectly. They're proof that you can still recognize what's healthy and what isn't. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Think about the relationships in your life. As you think of each person, pay attention to how your body responds. Do you feel lighter or heavier? Does your breathing become easier or more constrained? Does your heart rate speed up or slow down? These physical responses are your truth detectors, and they never lie. This awareness, this return to trusting your own experience, is your first line of defense against toxic people. Because once you can recognize them, once you can name what they're doing, they begin to lose their power over you. Their manipulations become transparent. Their tactics predictable. Their control over your emotions weakens, but recognition is just the beginning. In the coming moments, we're going to explore exactly how these individuals operate, why they do what they do, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself while maintaining your own integrity and compassion. Because this isn't about becoming bitter or suspicious. It's about becoming wise. It's about learning to distinguish between genuine connection and manipulation, between honest mistakes and calculated harm, between people who lift you up and those who tear you down. You deserve relationships that make you feel secure, valued, and understood. You deserve to trust your instincts. You deserve to set boundaries without guilt. And most importantly, you deserve to reclaim any power you've given away to those who would misuse it. Stay with me as we delve deeper into understanding not just how to spot toxic people, but how to respond to them in ways that protect your peace, your purpose, and your potential. Because the journey we're on isn't just about identifying what's wrong. It's about creating space for what's right. It's about clearing away the fog, so you can finally see the path to authentic, nurturing relationships that support your growth rather than stifling it. Now that we understand the importance of trusting our instincts, let's explore the deeper patterns that toxic people use to maintain control. Because make no mistake, control's at the heart of toxic behavior. But it's not always the obvious kind of control we've been taught to watch for. It's far more subtle, far more sophisticated. Let me share something powerful with you. Some toxic people don't actually have any real power over us. Their entire strategy relies on creating the illusion of power. They're like magicians performing elaborate tricks. Once you know how the trick works, it loses its magic. Once you can see the strings they're pulling, they can no longer puppet you. The first major pattern to recognize is what I call the emotional roller coaster. These individuals are masters at creating artificial highs and lows in relationships. They'll shower you with attention and approval one day, then become cold and distant. They'll make grand gestures of generosity, then use those very gestures as weapons later. After all I've done for you becomes their battle cry. This constant up and down serves a specific purpose. It keeps you addicted to their approval. You begin to chase those high moments, those glimpses of the wonderful person they can be. You start to believe that if you just try hard enough, if you just get it right, they'll stay that wonderful person all the time. But here's the truth. Those wonderful moments are just as calculated as the cruel ones. Think about that for a moment. How much energy have you spent trying to get back to those good times? How often have you found yourself thinking, if I can just explain it better, or if I can just prove how much I care? That's not love or friendship. That's manipulation. The second pattern is what I call moving goalposts. No matter what you do, it's never quite enough. Achieve one expectation, and 3 more appear. Meet those, and the original expectation suddenly changes. It's like playing a game where the rules keep changing, but nobody tells you the new rules until you've already lost. I remember working with a brilliant artist who had completely lost faith in her talents because of this exact pattern. Every time she met her partner's expectations for success, those expectations shifted. First, it was about getting her work in a gallery. Then when she did that, suddenly it wasn't the right gallery. When she got into a prestigious gallery, it became about sales numbers. When she hit impressive sales, it became about critical recognition. Nothing was ever enough. The truth she eventually realized, the truth I want you to understand is that these shifting expectations had nothing to do with her work and everything to do with maintaining control. Because if you're constantly striving to prove yourself, you're not questioning the dynamic itself. The third pattern is something most people never talk about, but it's crucial to understand. Toxic people are experts at weaponizing your virtues against. They use your compassion to guilt you, your loyalty to trap you, your forgiveness to excuse their behavior, and your desire to help to exploit you. Are you a kind person who tries to see the best in others? They'll use that to excuse their worst behavior. Are you someone who values honesty? They'll use your occasional white lies to paint you as the dishonest one. Are you dedicated to personal growth? They'll twist that into evidence that you're the one with all the problems. This is particularly insidious because it attacks the very qualities that make you who you are. It can make you doubt your best traits, question whether your compassion is actually weakness, whether your sensitivity is actually a flaw. Those qualities aren't weaknesses. They're only weaknesses in the hands of someone who would exploit them. Let's talk about the fourth pattern. The destruction of your support system. Toxic people instinctively know that isolated targets are easier to control. They'll often start by subtly criticizing your friends and family. They might say things like, "I'm just worried that they're not good for you," or "I can see how they're holding you back." They'll create scenarios where you have to choose between them and others, gradually shrinking your world until they become your primary source of validation and support. This isolation doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow process, like a python gradually tightening its grip. Each individual moment might seem reasonable. They're just looking out for you, after all. But the cumulative effect is that your world becomes smaller, your independence diminishes, and your ability to get outside perspective disappears. Now, here's something crucial to understand. Toxic people aren't necessarily conscious of these patterns. They're often acting from their own wounds, their own fears, their own distorted view of reality. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but understanding is important because it helps you respond more effectively. The victim narrative. Toxic people almost always present themselves as the victims, even when they're clearly the aggressors. They have an extraordinary ability to rewrite scenarios where they've hurt you into scenarios where you've actually hurt them. They'll do something cruel, then act wounded when you respond naturally to that cruelty. This pattern is particularly effective because it plays into our natural tendency to want to make things right. When someone appears to be hurting, our instinct is to comfort them, to fix the situation. Toxic people know this, and they use it masterfully. Think about times in your own life when you started out trying to address how someone hurt you, only to end up apologizing to them instead. That's this pattern in action. It's a manipulative tactic that keeps you off balance and maintains their control. But here's what I want you to really understand. Realizing these patterns isn't about becoming cynical or suspicious. It's about becoming wise. It's about developing discernment. It's about learning to distinguish between genuine human imperfection and calculated manipulation. Because yes, all relationships have difficulties. Yes, everyone makes mistakes. Yes, we all have moments where we don't show up as our best selves. But there's a world of difference between normal relationship struggles and toxic patterns of behavior. In healthy relationships, problems get resolved. Both people take responsibility for their part. Growth happens, trust deepens. In toxic relationships, the same problems keep recurring. Resolution never comes. Trust erodes. Growth is stunted. I want you to take a moment now to reflect on your own relationships. Think about the patterns we've discussed. Do you recognize any of them? Pay attention to how your body responds as you think about specific relationships. That tension in your shoulders, that knot in your stomach, that heaviness in your chest, Those aren't random sensations. They're wisdom trying to break through. As you develop this awareness, as you learn to recognize these patterns, you'll find yourself naturally attracted to healthier relationships. You'll start to notice and appreciate people who are consistent, whose words match their actions, who can take responsibility for their mistakes, who support your growth without trying to control it. Because that's what this journey is really about. It's not just about identifying what's toxic. It's about creating space for what's healthy. It's about reclaiming your power to choose who gets to be part of your life and how they get to treat you. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't have to compromise your truth to keep the peace. You don't have to sacrifice your well-being to prove your worth. These are lessons that might feel uncomfortable at first, but they're essential for creating a life filled with genuine, nurturing relationships. Stay with me as we move forward into understanding how to protect yourself from toxic behavior while maintaining your own integrity. Because the next part of our journey together is about developing practical strategies that honor both your need for protection and your capacity for compassion. Now that we understand how to recognize toxic patterns, let's talk about something equally important: how to protect yourself without losing yourself. Because here's the challenge many of us face. We recognize toxic behavior, but we struggle with what to do about it, especially when it comes from people we care about. The first thing I want you to understand is this: why setting boundaries isn't selfish. Protecting your peace isn't cruel. Taking care of yourself isn't abandonment. These are fundamental truths that toxic people work very hard to make you forget. Let me share something profound with you. See, your life force is sacred. Your energy is precious. Your peace of mind is priceless. These aren't just pretty words. They're fundamental truths about your existence. And just as you wouldn't pour your life savings into a fraudulent scheme, you shouldn't pour your emotional energy into toxic relationships. The first strategy I want to share with you is what I call the energy audit. This is a simple but powerful practice where you regularly check in with yourself about your relationships. After each interaction, ask yourself, did this exchange lift me up or drag me down? Did it energize me or drain me? Did it expand my world or shrink it? This isn't about keeping score. It's about becoming aware of patterns. Because here's the truth. While any relationship can have difficult moments, healthy relationships generally leave you feeling better, not worse. They challenge you to grow, not shrink. They inspire you to become more, not less. The second strategy is learning to trust the whisper before it becomes a scream. Your intuition often starts with gentle nudges, slight discomfort, minor doubts, small hesitations. But when we ignore these whispers, they're forced to get louder and louder until they become full-blown crises. I remember working with someone who ignored years of small boundary violations from a friend. "It's not that bad," she would say. "I'm probably being too sensitive," until one day she found herself in a situation that had spiraled so far out of control she barely recognized her own life. The whisper had become a scream. The power of the pause. When you feel pressured to make a decision, give an answer or take action. Pause. Take a breath. Create space. Toxic people often try to rush you into decisions, creating false urgency to bypass your natural wisdom. The pause is your protection against this manipulation. No is a complete sentence. You don't need to justify it, explain it, or defend it. This might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being the person who always says yes, who always accommodates, who always puts others first. But your no is not just about refusing something. It's about protecting your yes. The fourth strategy is what I call maintaining your reality anchor. Toxic people are expert reality distorters. They'll try to convince you that up is down, that wrong is right, that their harmful behavior is actually your fault. Your reality anchor is your truth. Your experiences, your feelings, your perceptions. Write things down, keep records, trust your memory. Don't let anyone convince you that what you experienced isn't real. This is particularly important when dealing with gaslighting, that insidious form of manipulation where someone tries to make you question your own sanity. Your reality anchor might be a journal, a trusted friend, or simply your own unwavering commitment to honoring your truth. The fifth strategy is understanding the power of the gray rock. When you can't immediately remove yourself from a toxic situation, you can make yourself as interesting as a gray rock. This doesn't mean becoming cold or cruel. You provide no drama, no emotional reactions, no engagement with their attempts to provoke. Think about it. Toxic people feed off emotional reactions. They crave the drama, the engagement, the power they feel when they can provoke a response from you. When you become like a gray rock, polite but unengaging, present but not invested, you stop providing the emotional fuel they need. These strategies aren't about winning battles, they're about preserving peace, your peace. They're not weapons to use against others. They're shields to protect yourself. The sixth strategy is what I call compassionate detachment. This is perhaps the most challenging, but also the most important strategy. It's about understanding that toxic behavior often comes from deep wounds, but those wounds aren't yours to heal. You can have compassion for someone's pain without taking responsibility for it. This is particularly important when dealing with family members or long-term relationships. You can honor the good memories while protecting yourself from present harm. You can acknowledge someone's potential while accepting their current. You can love someone from a safe distance. Think about it like this. If someone is drowning, throwing yourself into dangerous waters isn't helping them. It's just creating two victims. Real help might mean calling a lifeguard, throwing a life preserver, or directing them to swimming lessons. But it doesn't mean drowning yourself. The seventh strategy is building your support system. Toxic people work hard to isolate you because they know that isolation makes you more vulnerable to manipulation. Your defense is to consciously cultivate relationships with people who support your growth, respect your boundaries, and honor your truth. This might mean reconnecting with old friends, making new ones, seeking professional support, or joining communities of people on similar journeys. The key is to create a network of relationships that remind you of what healthy connections feel like. You don't need anyone's permission to protect yourself. You don't need to wait for someone to change or for situations to become unbearable. You have the right and the responsibility to honor your own well-being. But perhaps the most powerful strategy of all is what I call reclaiming your light. Toxic people often try to dim your light because it makes their darkness more comfortable. They might criticize your joy, mock your dreams, or try to make you feel guilty for your success. Your response: shine brighter. Not out of spite, but out of self-love. Pursue your passions, chase your dreams, celebrate your victories, live your truth. Because here's what toxic people don't want you to know: your joy is not negotiable. Your growth is not optional. Your light is not subject to their approval. Take a moment now to imagine yourself fully embracing these strategies. Imagine setting boundaries without guilt. Imagine trusting your intuition without doubt. Imagine living your life on your own terms, free from manipulation and drama. That vision isn't just a nice idea. It's your birthright. It's what becomes possible when you stop giving your power away to those who would misuse it. It's what happens when you finally decide that your peace is more important than other people's comfort with your growth. As we move forward, remember this. Protecting yourself from toxic people isn't about becoming hard or closed off. It's about becoming wise and discerning. It's about creating space in your life for relationships that nurture you, support you, and help you grow into your highest potential. Stay with me as we explore the final pieces of this journey, understanding how to maintain these boundaries while keeping your heart open, and how to create a life filled with authentic, nurturing connections that support your highest good. Now that we understand how to protect ourselves, let's explore something equally important: how to keep our hearts open while maintaining healthy boundaries. Because the goal isn't to build walls, it's to create gates that allow the right people in while keeping harmful influences out. The profound truth that took me years to understand. See, the ability to maintain strong boundaries and the capacity to love deeply aren't opposing forces. They're complementary powers. In fact, the clearer your boundaries are, the safer you become in opening your heart to genuine connections. Think about a beautiful garden. A garden needs both protection and nurturing to thrive. It needs fences to keep out destructive elements, but it also needs openness to sunlight, rain, and pollinators. Your heart is like that garden. Boundaries are your fence. They don't prevent growth. They create the safe space necessary for it. Let me share something powerful with you. Now that every time you maintain a healthy boundary, you're not just protecting yourself. You're teaching others how to have healthy relationships. You're contributing to the healing of collective relationship patterns. You're showing others what's possible when we honor both connection and self-respect. The first principle in this balance is what I call conscious vulnerability. This isn't about being completely open with everyone. It's about being intentional with your trust. It's about recognizing that vulnerability is a gift to be shared with those who have earned it, not a duty you owe to everyone who demands it. Think about trust like water. It should flow naturally, not be forced. When someone demands immediate, complete trust without earning it, that's a red flag. Healthy relationships develop trust gradually, like a river slowly carving its path, not like a flood breaking through defenses. The second principle is understanding the difference between forgiveness and permission. You can forgive someone's past behavior without giving them permission to continue it. You can release the burden of resentment without removing the boundary that protects you from further harm. This is particularly important when dealing with family members or long-term relationships. You might hear things like, "But we're family," or "After all our history together." Remember, shared history is a reason for courtesy and basic respect, not a license for continued toxic behavior. The third principle is what I call the authenticity test. In any relationship, ask yourself, how can I be fully myself? Do I feel safe expressing my true thoughts and feelings? Or am I constantly editing myself, walking on eggshells, trying to be what someone else wants me to be? Healthy relationships expand who you are. They create space for you to be authentic, to make mistakes, to learn and grow. Toxic relationships demand that you shrink, conform, and suppress your true self to maintain peace or earn acceptance. When you start being authentic, some relationships will naturally fall away. This isn't failure, it's filtration. It's your life removing what no longer serves your growth. It's making space for connections that align with who you're becoming. The fourth principle is maintaining what I call your energy boundaries. This goes beyond physical or emotional boundaries. It's about being conscious of where your energy goes. Are you investing in relationships that replenish you? Or are you constantly pouring into emotional black holes that never fill? Think about your energy like your life savings. You wouldn't keep investing in a business that consistently loses money. So why keep investing energy in relationships that consistently drain you? This isn't selfish, it's sustainable. It's recognizing that you can't serve from an empty vessel. The fifth principle is understanding the power of selective investment. Not every relationship needs to be deep and intimate. It's okay to have different levels of connection with different people. Some people can be pleasant acquaintances without becoming close friends. Some family members can be handled with kind detachment rather than intimate involvement. This selective investment isn't about being cold or dismissive. It's about being wise with your emotional resources. It's about recognizing that while you can be kind to everyone, you don't need to be vulnerable with everyone. Now let's talk about something that many people struggle with. The fear of being alone. Often, we maintain toxic relationships because we're afraid of solitude. But here's the truth. The quality of your relationships matters more than one authentic connection is worth more than a dozen superficial or toxic ones. Moreover, the time you spend alone after releasing toxic relationships isn't empty time. It's healing time. It's the space where you reconnect with yourself, rebuild your strengths, and prepare for healthier connections. It's like letting a field lie fallow so it can become fertile again. The sixth principle is what I call the growth alignment. Look for relationships where both people are committed to growth, both individual and shared growth. These relationships might not always be comfortable, but they'll always support your evolution into your highest self. In these relationships, conflicts become opportunities for deeper understanding. Differences become chances for expansion. Challenges become catalysts for growth. This is dramatically different from toxic relationships where conflicts become weapons. Differences become threats, and challenges become reasons. Every time you choose not to engage with toxic behavior, you're creating space for healthy connections to enter your life. Every time you maintain a boundary, you're announcing to the universe the kind of relationships you're ready for. The seventh principle is understanding the power of resonance. When you're vibrating at a frequency of self-respect, self-love, and authentic expression, you naturally attract others who resonate at that same frequency. This isn't magical thinking, it's practical reality. When you know your worth, you recognize it in others. When you honor your boundaries, you appreciate others who do the same. Take a moment now to imagine your relationships as a garden. Some plants need to be pruned. Others need to be completely removed. Some need more nurturing. And there's space, beautiful, fertile space for new growth to. This vision isn't just a dream. It's a blueprint. It's what becomes possible when you understand that boundaries and love aren't opposites. They're partners in creating healthy, fulfilling relationships. It's what happens when you finally realize that being selective about who you let into your life isn't being mean. It's being wise. As we move toward our conclusion, remember this. Your capacity for love isn't diminished by having strong boundaries. It's enhanced. Your ability to connect isn't reduced by being selective. It's refined. Your power to create meaningful relationships isn't weakened by saying no to toxic ones. Stay with me as we bring all these pieces together, understanding how to integrate these principles into your daily life in a way that creates lasting transformation and allows you to build a life filled with authentic, nurturing connections that support your highest. As we bring our journey together to a close, I want you to take a moment to reflect on how far you've come. Think about where you were when we started, perhaps feeling confused, doubting your perceptions, questioning your right to set boundaries. Now look at where you are, armed with understanding, equipped with strategies, and most importantly, reconnected with your own inner wisdom. But this isn't the end of your journey. It's really just the beginning. Because what we've been talking about isn't just about identifying toxic people or protecting yourself from manipulation. It's about something far more profound. It's about reclaiming your power to create the life and relationships you truly deserve. Let me share something transformative with you. Everything we've discussed, recognizing patterns, setting boundaries, maintaining your authenticity, all of these are acts of self-love. And self-love isn't selfish. It's essential. It's the foundation upon which all healthy relationships are built. Think about it this way. Every time you honor your boundaries, you're making a declaration to the universe about your worth. Every time you trust your intuition, you're strengthening your connection to your inner wisdom. Every time you choose not to engage with toxic behavior, you're voting for your own well-being. The journey ahead isn't always going to be easy. There will be moments of doubt, times when old patterns try to reassert themselves, days when it feels easier to go back to familiar dysfunction than to maintain your new boundaries. These moments aren't failures. They're opportunities to practice everything you've learned. Remember the signs we discussed: the inconsistency, the reality twisting, the emotional roller coasters. Remember how toxic people use your virtues against you, how they work to isolate you, how they create confusion to maintain control. This knowledge is your armor, but it's not meant to make you paranoid or suspicious. It's meant to make you wise. Think about the strategies we've explored. The energy audit, trusting the whisper, the power of the pause. Maintaining your reality anchor, becoming the gray rock. Practicing compassionate detachment, building your support system. These aren't just techniques. They're tools for transformation. They're ways of honoring your right to peace, to joy, to authentic connection. Consider the principles of maintaining open-hearted boundaries, conscious vulnerability, the authenticity test, energy boundaries, selective investment, growth alignment, the power of resonance. These aren't just ideas. They're pathways to creating relationships that nurture your soul rather than drain it. Now, I want to share something powerful about the road ahead. As you begin to implement these changes in your life, you might face resistance, not just from others, but from within yourself. Old patterns might whisper that you're being too harsh, too selfish, Your newfound boundaries might feel uncomfortable, like shoes that haven't been broken in yet, but this discomfort is normal. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong, it's evidence that you're growing. It's your old self making space for your new, more empowered self to emerge. Just as a butterfly must struggle to break free from its cocoon, this temporary discomfort is strengthening you for flight. Think about every healthy relationship you've ever witnessed or experienced. Think about those rare, beautiful connections where both people feel safe, seen, and supported. These relationships aren't accidents. They're the result of people who know their worth, honor their boundaries, and choose authentic connection over convenient dysfunction. You deserve those kinds of relationships. Not because you're perfect. None of us are. Not because you've earned them through suffering. Pain is not a prerequisite for love. You deserve them simply because you exist, because you're here, because you're you. The path forward isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about peeling away the layers of doubt, fear, and people-pleasing that toxic relationships have wrapped around your true nature. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be smaller, quieter, less demanding. As you leave here today, I want you to carry with you this unshakable truth. Your intuition is reliable. Your boundaries are valid. Your feelings matter. Your peace is priceless. These aren't just affirmations. They're your birthright. They're the truth of who you are beneath all the conditioning that taught you to doubt yourself. Every healthy boundary you set creates a ripple effect in the world. Every time you honor your truth, you give others permission to honor theirs. Every time you choose self-respect over approval-seeking, you demonstrate what healthy relationships look like. You're not just changing your own life. You're contributing to the healing of collective relationship patterns. The work ahead isn't about becoming hard or closed off. It's not about building walls or nurturing suspicion. It's about developing discernment. It's about creating gates instead of walls. Gates that you control. Gates that can welcome in what serves your highest good while keeping out what diminishes your light. Think of yourself as a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't chase boats or beg them to come to shore. It simply stands in its truth, shines its light, and the right boats navigate toward it. That's what happens. When you start honoring your worth and maintaining healthy boundaries, the right people are drawn to your authenticity, while those who preferred your compliance naturally fall away. Your journey forward might involve making difficult decisions. You might need to distance yourself from certain relationships. You might need to disappoint people who are used to your endless accommodation. You might need to face the discomfort of change and the uncertainty of growth. But here's what I want you to remember in those challenging moments. You're not alone. Every person who has ever chosen growth over stagnation, authenticity over approval, self-respect over people-pleasing, they've walked this path before you. They face these same doubts, these same fears, these same challenges, and they've emerged stronger, clearer, more authentically themselves. You have that same strength within you. It's been there all along, waiting for you to recognize it, to claim it, to live from it. Every time you've survived difficult circumstances, every time you've rebuilt after disappointment, every time you've started over despite fear, you've been demonstrating this strength. As you step forward from this moment, carry with you this vision. A life where your relationships energize rather than drain you. A life where your boundaries are respected, your authenticity celebrated, your growth supported. A life where you no longer need to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. This isn't just a dream. It's a possibility waiting for you to claim it. The journey of reclaiming your power and creating healthy relationships isn't a destination you reach once and for all. It's a path you walk daily with each choice, each boundary, each act of self-respect. Some days you'll walk it perfectly. Other days you'll stumble. Both are okay. What matters is that you keep walking, keep growing, keep choosing yourself. You have everything you need within you right now to create the relationships you deserve. You have the wisdom to recognize what's healthy and what's toxic. You have the strength to maintain boundaries. You have the courage to choose growth over comfort. You have the power to transform your relationship patterns. The time has come to rise, to reclaim your power, to honor your truth, to create the life and relationships you deserve. Not tomorrow, not when you're perfect, not when everyone understands or approves, but right now exactly as you are. The world needs your light, not dimmed by toxic relationships, not filtered through people-pleasing. not shadowed by self-doubt, but shining in its full, authentic brilliance. It's time to let that light shine. It's time to create the life you deserve. It's time to become the person you were always meant to be. The journey begins now. And you are ready?